Welcome everyone to another episode of Dynamics Corner. What is thought leadership, Brad? I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on February 5th, 2025. Kris, what is thought leadership? That's an interesting question. And with that question comes an interesting conversation. We had the opportunity to speak with a wonderful member of the community that has a lot of experience and knowledge about thought leadership and many other topics. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Jon Rivers. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Morning, Jon.
Doing good.
Excellent. Been looking forward to speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I love the bus, the Volkswagen.
I love the Volkswagens myself.
Do you have one of those?
I don't have the bus. It's on the list to get at some point, but I do have an old Volkswagen car.
Oh, nice.
Yep. I have a convertible Carmen Ghia.
Wow.
Commandeer?
Carmen Ghia.
Oh,
Let me see if I can get a rough idea. Hang on a second. You don't see but that will give you sort of maybe an idea.
okay.
See, I could picture John cruising the beach. Yeah, top down, cruising the beach, the palm trees, just like the Volkswagen bus, and it's nice. So,
Yep.
it's yeah, definitely. That's the way to live. That's the way to live.
You know, it's interesting that Volkswagen bus right there. When I bought this house, when I was going through, the whole place, right? And then there's a shop. And when I went through the shop, because I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm excited because there's a shop for me. And then I went to go look. There was a covered vehicle. At that time, I didn't know what it was. I pulled it down just to look at a peek. I'm sure that the owner would have said no, but I took a peek anyway. And it was a red Volkswagen bus. I thought it was going to come with the house. I actually asked for it and I said, hey, does this come with the house? And he goes, oh, no.
I don't think someone would.
I
give you
remodeled that thing from scratch. It's like, okay. I was like, are you sure? I was trying to haggle the guy to see if he'll leave it.
Yeah. Depends on what it is. Some of the buses nowadays can be pretty expensive.
Yes. I'm sure it was pristine.
They should bring them back.
They do.
Well,
they are bringing them back.
They have. They brought back an ID, which is sort of an electric bus. You either love them or you hate them. If you're a Volkswagen fan, you're either one side. You're not in between. It's a hate or a like.
They have the electric version, Brad. So
that's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The electric.
I'd have to try it. I'm stuck on the Teslas at this point. Just maybe because I haven't driven any other electric vehicles. Maybe I should try some of the other electric vehicles to see how they work.
Yeah, I mean the bus is, I don't know. It's all full electric. I mean, my older daughter loves hanging out when I go to the meets and stuff, and actually wants an old bus. She said, "Why would I pay like 70,000-80,000 to get an electric bus, and it doesn't look that great? Where I could have an older one and probably have it all totally done out, and for less money."
I'd want a bus with one of the campers at the top, like the whatever they pop up or whatever they call. See, vehicles back then so much different than they are today. But Mr. Jon, sir, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Been looking forward to it, as I had mentioned. Before we jump into the conversation, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Who am I? Well, I'm Jon Rivers. I co-own a marketing company called Marketeering with my business partner, Diane Sager. We focus on the ERP and CRM side of the fence when it comes to marketing. We're a full-blown agency. We help from everything from messaging, websites, SEO, content development, all those things. That's a little bit about, should we say, the business side, which, hey, I'm not going to try to talk too much more about that. People can work it out what we do and who we are. myself personally, and I'm going to give, because I know you said to me this could be as long as it needs to be, but I think I was on another podcast and it's like, okay, let me give you a little bit of history of where did I start, where did I come from. I actually trained as a developer, and probably a lot of people don't. Some people are probably starting to get that, but I actually trained as a developer. I trained on COBOL, assembly, and I didn't do too much on Pascal, but I did a little bit on that, some C++. That's where I started. And I realized quickly that that was not what I wanted to do.
COBOL.
Just a little fun fact. Pascal is where I got started as well. But I did take assembly language and COBOL in school when I was growing up.
Right.
So,
yep.
Chris, do you remember those languages?
That's how I started. It's actually COBOL. I worked in a data center, and their whole thing was on COBOL, and I got introduced to that. I'm like, ooh, and
assembly
then I moved
was
on.
great. Assembly was great with the move and the shift and keeping track of that. That was all.
Yeah, I had some fun when I was doing a work experience when I was at school, and I ended up going into a company that actually built basically the navigation and devices for boats, more personal boats and stuff like that. And they just let me loose on playing around with with the assembly, because that's what they were using to actually control the controls. And say, do what you want, build your own device, and write your own code. So that was a lot of fun back then.
No, that's good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We can continue with who you are. You struck a nostalgic moment for me.
No, and actually I'd add to that. It's like, yes, I may be getting older, but at the same time, I think my college was a little bit behind at the times. If I'd been 1 year earlier in college, it would have been punch tape. That's going to show you back. Right? So it's like, thank God I didn't have to do punch tape, because that would have been a nightmare. I know a friend of mine who actually did do it, and it wasn't fun. Roll forward, I actually got more into consulting. That's where I started, really. I actually worked for a company that specialized in fonts. That's where I probably got a little bit of my design concept, but I actually ran a division that actually created fonts. And if anyone remembers the days of laser printers where you used to have a cartridge that used to plug in with fonts, if anyone remembers that, we were the main supplier of those cartridges around the world. So we were the ones who actually did all that development, put them together. Anyway, roll forward from there. I continued consulting. I actually got more into I would say the ERP side of the fence. So it was more consulting. At that time, it was Jetty Edwards. I was working for an ISV at that time that had a solution that bolted onto Jetty Edwards' World software. Stayed with them through their One World. Actually, was, like I said, consulting, did some help desk. I then migrated over to the US because I was asked to come over and actually help run their East Coast division, run all the consulting and help desk team, which is what I did, and just kept on doing that. And then suddenly we went through the time where PeopleSoft decided they were going to buy Jetty Edwards, but then Oracle came in and squashed everything. And that really pretty much killed the business we were in. It just changed everything. I mean, we still kept going, but we knew we had to find another ERP. And that's where Microsoft came into it. And I was part of a team that actually went out to start investigating and then actually help the dev team, or what dev team? Actually, it wasn't even a dev team. It was one guy that was part-time given to me. We had to go out and try to integrate. First of all, we were looking at GP, or Great Plains as it was back then. But instead, I said, look, that's not going to work for us. It's too low price. We ended up working with Exapta.
Good old Exapta.
Wow.
Exapta 2.5 is where, and I've started changing my tune of how long I've been in the industry. I'm going to do it by versions of software now. So I hit the dynamic space in Exapta 2.5.
You see, great minds think alike, because this is what I say to everybody, that Microsoft changes the names of the products on purpose, because that's how you know how long someone has been working in that space. Because if you call it Navision, we know that you started back when Navision was popular. Microsoft Dynamics Nav. If you look at all the names that change, Yammer becomes Viva Engage, Entra ID was Active Directory. So whomever's speaking, I have a sense of, okay, so you've been working this long with the product. So I like that philosophy.
Yeah. So that's where I'm going to go, because maybe it seems like I'm not as old as I am.
Well, you're talking punch tapes. I'm sorry, that gives it away.
That gives it away, right?
I'm not trying to say anything without saying anything, but the reality is, I think
maybe I should keep that one out of the conversation next time. So with that, I worked on it, got into also bought a little bit of my dev experience in it, worked with them. I actually did write some X++ back then. Was actually I could even implement back then. I could implement Exapta, no issues myself. Got that solution into the marketplace, actually built it out. Got more into pre-sales, working with the partners as we were trying to onboard that into the partners. For anyone that wants to know what was that product, it was actually originally called Crateform, which was then taken over by Bottomline Technologies later on. So I continue working on that, really staying in consulting, implementation, pre-sales. Started to realize I really want to get into managing the partners. I was sort of doing it, but I was not doing it, should we say. It wasn't my official job. So I actually left that to ISV and joined another ISV called Data Masons. Some people may know who they are. I think I was something like the 23rd employee when I joined them. I joke now I'm still recovering. I think I've nearly recovered from all the EDI documents, so I nearly got those out of my head.
EDI, wow. Yep. The most standard, non-standard on the planet.
Exactly.
That is true, man.
Like they say EDI is a standard. I'm going to keep cutting you off just because you were going down memory lane here.
Good.
That amazing. I don't even know why we use EDI today in the sense of the way EDI works. Because the whole premise of EDI with charging by the kilo character and consolidation of characters to reduce transmission back when you had 200 baud modems, like it's 2025. I understand technology and systems need to change, but over the years,
it's still not changed.
It doesn't.
It's still out there. I mean, some areas have evolved, but it's still there.
I don't understand it. I try, but
So I joined them to actually help run their channel. So got in. I mean, they were a little heavier at that time in the AX side. Now we're going to change the names, right? So I actually helped them build out their Navision, Nav, AX, F&O, whatever words we're going to use now, and also GP practice, and grew that. I left a little bit later. I know now that they got sold right back to SBS. I think I was somewhere just shy. They were shy of about 100 people when I left. At that time, I decided to change directions. And that's when I went out into the marketing world. And it's like, so how the hell did he get from dev
shift
to marketing, right? But I had to. I mean, at Data Masons, we had a part-time marketeer, and I had to do a lot of stuff myself. Got into a lot of social media. It was probably the key. I built out my LinkedIn network of massive at that point of everyone I could find that I could influence to actually come and get their product at that point.
That's interesting. What a journey that you have. That you have. So you've been around, you've seen a lot, and it is interesting to see the shifts of how people get somewhere. And I think, as you progress through your career, you start off want to do all that crazy coding type stuff. And then as you get older, you want to do other creative type stuff that doesn't require as much work, I think.
More relationship. Like it's shifted, less coding and more relationship.
Well, I think psychologically you want to give back in a sense. So you want to be able to talk with people and help people and interact with people versus sit and just do this cool, great build type thing. I think as we mature through life, not to talk about psychology.
I think sometimes I do have that. I sort of like think, ooh, I could go back and do that. At the end of the day, it's like I look at, I don't know, let's just take some like Power Automate, right? I like sort of the concept of that. I'm thinking, I think I could probably do that. Right. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I really want to get delved into that again stuff. But yeah, I mean, but I think even in our everyday of what we do, we're dealing with technology and marketing, is right. I mean, hey, we can put the word AI into the conversation. That's evolving. So I think having a technical mind at the moment is actually helping understand what's evolving in there. And I think you have to in marketing have that mindset, especially when you're working with the clients we're working with.
Yeah, you're utilizing a lot more technology in the marketing space because I mean you got to adjust too, right? Where where the industry is going, specifically the areas of your focus, and then in having to utilize different tools to reach the audience you're looking for, and what you're targeting. So
Right.
that must be a crazy time for you then, with all this AI coming out, and it's like how do you how do you integrate that with your day-to-day stuff in the marketing
It's
space?
challenging, right? Because what you think is today, it's not tomorrow, right? At the end of the day, and it keeps changing. So yeah, so it's finding how do we. I think sometimes it's. I think at the early stage was like, how do we battle it, right, from a marketing company, because we don't want our prospective customers using it to actually take away business from them, right? That was probably the first mindset you have. And over the time, it's like, no, we've got to encompass it and support it and find ways how we can use it to be more efficient, but at the same time be not scared that, hey, some of the prospective people out there are going to be using it as well, and that's okay, but it is not the finished result. I think it's going to simplify it, right? Yes, you may have it write a blog, but you can't just publish that blog as is, right? You
Yeah.
got to do some work on top of that. You got to humanize it. You've got to go through and make sure that um, AI didn't go and reference something that isn't true, right? At the end of the day, it can do that. And I think if you don't go through it and you don't know your information, it can really take you down the wrong path. So what I'm saying is we've got to encompass it, and I'm constantly looking at it. Next week, I'm going to be at the Tampa local chapter meeting for the Tampa
The
Roadshow
roadshow.
for Dynamics Communities, right? And I'm going to be talking about AI prompts for Copilot. So we're going to go through some of that. So at the end of the day, is I was looking at, I mean, I've done a similar one of that session before, but I'm already starting to look at it and say, okay, I probably need to refresh some of those prompts, because those prompts back then were probably what we thought, but hey, we could probably tidy them up and make them more efficient today based on what we've learned.
Yeah, with everything changing, you do have to refresh that. But I think you do bring a great point in that conversation, that it's embracing technology and using technology where it fits within an
Right.
organization, and not feeling like you have to use the latest and greatest all the time. I think that's the
Exactly.
challenge with many that I have been speaking with lately. Your point is great because you're coming from the marketing point of view, and your client base will most likely use AI because AI in some fashion is everywhere.
Right.
So you're not going to compete with the AI. So it's embracing the technology, incorporating into your workflow, to how you could add the business value or that relationship value. It goes back to what I think is a big part of this whole AI space, is the relationships become more important versus just being able to churn out assembly line
Content.
type
Yeah.
stuff.
Right. And I think
Because
also, I think on top of that as well, right? I think it's what you know up here, right? At the end of the day, AI doesn't, I mean, AI only knows what it's been given. The analogy I like to use is, hey, what are we coming up? We're getting very close to April when we're going to see wave one, right, for the Dynamics products come out. At the end of the day, if no one has put that out in the interweb, how is AI going to get that information? Right? If none of the new features and functions which are going to be there have been shared online, and then AI has sucked that in to what I like to call it is like its data bank. If it's not sucked it in, it can't tell you anything about wave one for 25.
I
It
laugh.
just can't.
I laugh at that because I think of that sometimes. I'm like, with everybody using Copilot to generate content,
Right.
when is the point where there's no more content to be used because Copilot's creating all of the content?
The new content.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that, never ending cycle for me, because Copilot creates more and more content based on content that it knows. So people are using that to publish content. So somebody has to have the original content somewhere to put into this.
And that's the person that's going to be out in the front, right? And I think that's the one that's going to change everything, is they're the ones who are writing the original content that hasn't been talked about before. I think over time, they're the ones who are going to stand out and be those experts.
Oh, they have to be, because we'll have,
Yeah.
unless AI starts creating its own information,
Well, there is that.
where it will be able to
There's
do its
that
own
chance.
tests, its own analysis, and talk to itself. I'm waiting
I
to the
see.
time where I can just sit and have a full-blown conversation with it. I know you can do that in
Wow.
partial now, but you'll never need to leave the house.
Well, as long as it puts a paycheck in my bank account, I don't have an issue.
Yeah.
I could do
The
this for
mailbox
me.
money, Brad. Remember?
Exactly. Just mail me
It's
the
called
money.
mailbox money.
It's a way that you get to that too. No, it's a challenge. So from the marketing point of view, who is your target that you market? What's your typical customer or target audience?
So we really focus in on ERP and CRM partners and ISVs. That's where we've really focused in, with a very strong focus in the dynamic space. Now, does that not include the Power Platform? Yes, it does. I think, to me, I still lump, and if I'm right or wrong, I still lump the Power Platform into the dynamic space, or into the ERP space, right? And CRM, because it's interconnectable. I know you could use it elsewhere, but I think that really becomes, and that's an area that we really focus on, is the dynamic space. I mean, most of our customers are there. You're probably going to ask, well, okay, there's a lot of different size partners. We work from all different. I mean, for some partners who may be small shops of a couple people, we're their complete department for marketing, right? We are their marketing team, and we do everything for them, from their website all the way through their content creation, to analyzing and all that stuff, and then share that back. We could go to the next step where we're starting to get to a hybrid version of that, where we're doing some of the work and they have internal people that do some of the other work. Or we may go to a bigger organization where, and again, this is just a couple new clients we took on recently, where they're breaking more and more into the dynamic space, but they don't have an understanding of the products inside that space. They understand maybe Acumatica or the Sage or those products. So what we're also bringing is our understanding of how the dynamics world is working for them. So we bring that into the equation, because we have a deep understanding based on our history of the ecosystem. So again, if you go back, I can lean on, if we're working with an ISV, right, I can lean on how we built some of our relationships with partners. So we can actually help them in a marketing way. How are we going to market to, we're a new ISV in the space, what do we do to get that ISV product into the partner community? We know that because we've done it. I probably should add into my business partner, Diane Sager. She has got a good history as well. I mean, she was actually with Western Computers, Western Computer, way back in time when they were a small shop, and helped them build up. She was actually their VP of Sales and Marketing back then, and helped them grow. And now, I mean, they're a big ship out there, right? They're one of the cruise liners which are going around picking up clients. And then later on, she ended up going and working for Jet Reports as they're working on the marketing team. So I think she was VP of marketing for them. So again, and she was there through that. They already had good growth, but she was there when they went through the growth of getting their product, Jet Reports, as inside the NAV product at the time, and then just snowballed from there. So again, a lot of experience from the community, We can get into the community side. But,
definitely want to get into the community side. That was the perfect lead into what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, so the community comes a big play into us being, right? So again, I think that gives you an idea of probably our ideal customer. I think it's really down to, at the end of the day, if you're struggling with the eco because you don't know it and you need content, we help a lot with that. If you're new to space, or even if you've been out there, is making sure you're messaging, right? So we went through a good phase where, and we still do, it's like where, and we still, I probably laugh about this sometimes, there's still a lot of partners out there. You go to their websites and it feels like they're still trying to sell on-prem. They're not talking anything to do with cloud, right? We can see some smiles there. And at the end of the day, we're helping those partners transition themselves to that different messaging that needs to be done for the cloud. So we go through a lot of that with partners as well, and it's still happening today.
I think messaging is extremely important. I'd love to get into the community because I know you've been a big part of the community as well too. But to bring back, I understand now the focus of your marketing is you help individuals, primarily partners at ISVs, be able to market the product that the product suite, I will say, that they're looking to work with to their target audience. And it does become more important now because I think generationally, the target audience of their customers is different because people now do a lot of research before they reach out. Whereas before it was, Kris, I'm looking to do an ERP software product. What do you have for me? And then Kris would explain Business Central, demonstrate Business Central, sell Business Central, where now I'm seeing the shift of, hey, Kris, I'm buying Business Central. What can you do for me?
Yeah.
To me, it seems to be there's a shift of approach with the decision makers with all the information that's available online, even more so with AI, goes to your point to having the proper message out there that a lot of the research is already done beforehand. And what somebody's really looking for is the relationship to help guide them through the journey.
I 100% agree with that. But at the same time, getting that messaging correct, right? Because yes, we go back, but I think the ERP, let's just talk ERP, right? ERP space is so much more crowded today than it was even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? You could probably, I'm going to get beaten up here, I know I will, but you probably could hypothetically count the number of ERP systems on one hand, right? Now you probably need your hands, your feet, and God knows what else. Because at the end of the day, there are folks out there, and we could probably say, okay, yes, it might be BC under the hood, but they're not promoting it as BC, they're promoting it as a vertical product.
Correct.
Which makes it look like there's even more ERP. So EDI came into it, but ERP solutions.
I sense your trauma.
So at the end of the day, it gets complicated. So at the end of the day, is how do we get out there in front of the noise, right? But I think you're right there, Brad. There is so much opportunity for researching now that the buyer is a lot more intelligent about where they're going to go. And let's roll it back to AI. AI is even going to play into that as well, right? I just wrote an article about, hey, partners and ISVs, are you starting to think about how do you get yourself as a source on AI, right? Because it comes back with sources. You've got to start looking at, because that's going to change the search process as well over the next few years. I mean, I know from default on my machine, when I go to search, it doesn't default to Google or Bing. It defaults to an AI tool for search.
Yes.
Yep.
Right? And then from there,
yeah.
We could go off on a tangent forever. What time is this? But it's true. And I listen to some podcasts, obviously. I listen to this one sometimes as well. And it is changing. It's you now search, even if you do go to Google, you search for something, it gives you a summary at the top. And then you find the sources and then it'll also list the pages. But I use that more now as I'll read the summary, see the points, see the sources, and then based on the point that it shows me or the paragraph that it gets from the source, I'll click that source link. Versus
same here.
Sometimes I will scroll down if if the information that I have isn't quite what I was looking for whatever
Yep.
reason, which again could be the way that I'm searching. Not to say that the tool's not proper. It's, did I use the tool properly? And I'll see the link.
Right.
But most of my searches, the sources that I go to, will come from that top bracket, or even typing into Copilot a question, and it will give me some sources.
The behaviors change, right? Not just from a client side, but also from partners. Like you said, Jon, you're having maybe smaller partners that wants to get into the space, or an ISV that's getting into space. You're guiding them through, not only from your experience, but what you're also seeing from the behavior of like how prospects are now looking at buying a solution. And so it's really more important than ever to use data behind that, using you're gathering data in terms of like the behavior of how people now buy products. It's certainly shifted in at least the last 5 years, of how this ecosystem of example Business Central has changed, because now you have your marketplace, right? Your app source, and that's how people buy stuff. And how do you market that, and how do you target those prospects? There's so many moving pieces that you have to consider.
It's like, I mean, there's so many different places you could be, and it's like, well, okay, where do we start when we only have this small of a budget, right? And it's just doing it through a piece. I mean, we're working with Microsoft and a well-known distributor at the moment on a lot of migration. So helping partners with that migration from either GP or SL or NAV to BC, because that's a big area that Microsoft is focused on. So there's funding that we get that helps the partners we're working through that distributor to actually help with that migration. So making sure that we're writing content that actually starts to bring that partner that really, in some cases, is not doing any marketing for the last X number of years, now trying to bring them to the forefront, or at least try to focus on that they've got a group of customers themselves. How do we get those pulled over? We've got to put stuff out publicly, but we're really using that to actually talk to their existing customer base. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I think again, we could pull this back as well to like the community. It's like being so entrenched in the community, we get to hear, because we're working every day. Yes, we're hearing what the customers, we're seeing what's working, but we're also entrenched in the community, which gives us a good feel of what is happening. It's like, hey, I mean, I've talked to you guys, but at the same time, what do you see, right? Okay, do we, not that we want to steal and take away what's being successful for you guys, but how can we, because at the end of the day, it's how can we maybe take advantage of some of that ideas and bring that in? But the bottom line is that the more that we can make, if we're focused on dynamics, the more that we make dynamics the number one, it's going to help everyone, even if we hypothetically stolen an idea that someone else is finding successful. That's helping in the long run. It's not stealing.
It's not. Well, there's a couple points there. One, I agree with you when I say it over and over. You can listen to many episodes. If the product does well, we all do well. And your second point, no, it's true, because the ERP space is large because of the need. It's small because of the products, which there are a wide range of products, and if you can define and call what you would call ERP. But if you want Business Central, if Business Central is your core or the Power Platform, I'll just say the D365 stack for the sake of the conversation. If that is your core, if there's a lot of exposure to it, go back to the AI searches where the product will come up for those that are looking for it. Then they need to find someone to source it for them. If it's a successful and visible product, you have more opportunity to have that customer move over to use your services. And you will never be the only one to know or do something, because if you do something well and it's successful, others will try to replicate that in some fashion. Look at all the automakers we have. You don't just have one automaker. You don't have just one truck maker because somebody made a truck and everyone said, oh, a truck looks cool. Let's make a truck of our own with a slight variation or a slight difference from the other one. And it takes a lot for people to accept the fact that you will never be the only one. And if you are, it will not be long.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could take that down into a lot of things. We end up liking certain brands, right? I mean, take a pair of sneakers, right? Some people are going to like this brand over this brand because they like the brand, or because it's connected to some sports person, or whatever, right? So at the end of the day is, even if the two things, hey, they keep my feet dry, or they let me run, I don't know, right? They let me walk. They still do the same thing, but they're just different. I mean, it is what it is. But again, it's a lot more crowded today. We've just got to get out there and stand out from that crowd, and that's one of the things we try to do.
So from a, let's say, for example, as a new partner or ISV that's getting into the dynamic space, one of the things that you had mentioned earlier is that they have limited budget. So what would be the where would I put that money for someone that's small that's trying to get into the dynamics community? Like, where should they focus?
It's a hard one to fully answer, but I would say, because I mean, I like to take them down, to be honest, down the thought leadership side. I really think at the end of the day, thought leadership is really key. I think that's one area that we tap in a lot. And it's not just writing a blog, but writing it more from a thought leadership concept. Now, because we've produced that piece of content, now we can use it in multiple places.
Define thought leadership.
So one is really talking, I would say, like talking about the problems that a client is having and showing your expertise in that space.
Excellent.
And how you're solving it. Not talking about BC. I mean, there's no harm in doing it, but don't write a sales piece.
I understand. So you're not talking about BC's functionality. You're talking about your expertise to solving problems utilizing Business Central.
Correct. And you may bring a little bit in as like, this is how it can do it, but not in a sales way.
I understand. I think I'm repeating it in Brad speak just because if I can absorb it, then at least I understand it, and hopefully it helps those that may not understand it, but everybody else probably does, and it's just me. But it's explaining how you use the tool, what the tool can do, but how you're going to use the tool to solve the problem. It's
really, there's a challenge out there, right? There's a challenge in this vertical, and it's a common issue. We're going to go out there and explain how we've solved that issue in more of an educational piece than a sales piece. All right. And taking it deeper. At the end of the day, it's not just writing one article talking about multiples, right? You could talk about thought leadership. It's like, let's just take migrations, right? At the end of the day is, what are you missing, right? From moving from GP to BC, right? I mean, we could tap into that there is less and less possibly ransomware happening when the product's in the cloud compared to when it's on-prem. And right, so you can get a little bit more into the security side and the benefits there, and how that had, if a client had moved from, and they had done it in a timely manner, or then at the end of the day, they probably wouldn't have got a ransom attack on their on-prem if they'd done that. But as soon as they moved, they were able to, they kept still getting attacked, but no one got in because it was in the cloud. Just trying to think of a good example there. Or, right, so it's that talking about, or there is something in manufacturing, right? If you're, again, I think this is the change we're starting to see as well. If we go back, right, in time, when we used to sell ERP, we didn't care so much. Yes, we did, but we didn't care about the vertical that we were attaching it to, right? So at the end of the day is a lot of clients who historically, they may have a lot of verticals within, they don't have tons of people in one vertical. They seem to be all over the place, right? It was really just I've got some customers in healthcare, I've got some in financial, I've got some in manufacturing, some in distribution. That's changed in the model we do today. If we're really focused on professional services, we don't want to talk about manufacturing. We got to talk about how we're solving those problems in the professional services side.
Okay, just to circle back, just to close the loop on where your your money should be going, based on your budget, is really to spend time on the thought leadership component, where you're putting content and you're solving problems, not primarily just focusing on your product that you're just selling this product. Is being part of that conversation. In this case, maybe going to a community event where you may be speaking to get your name out there, and then at that point to get some visibility. To me, I think that's important. As someone maybe starting into the dynamic space, is joining these community events and trying to get some speaking sessions as a starting point, depending on your budget that you have.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
there's one other area on that, Kris, that I would add as well, and I probably should have said it first before I said thought leadership, is your foundation. What is your foundation? Your website is your foundation, right? At the end of the day, is you can write all this thought leadership, but the client, prospective client, is at some point going to go and research you.
Yeah.
And let's put it polite, if you have a crap website, it's probably going to turn them off, especially, again, let's go back to verticalization. If you have nothing talking about professional services on there, you're probably not going to bring them in. So it's making sure that foundation is right in the first place. And there's a lot of sites out there that are not like that. And we tend to, historically, we could get away with that. Now you really need to do that. I think of one, a client we were working with, and then they took some stuff in-house and they went off and did a Google ad campaign. And then they came back to us and said, well, can you analyze this? Because it's not producing any leads directly. They were getting people to the site, but it wasn't converting. So the ad was really good, but the messaging, once they got them to their site, did not match up to what they were trying to say they were doing.
No,
the customer left or the prospect left at that point. So at the end of the day, your website is your foundation. And again, if we go back to search is, at the end of the day, Google and even AI, they're searching out there. And if that foundation, that website is not correct, I'm thinking of a better word, I can't think of it yet, but if it's not there and it's not built correctly, it's not going to come up in the searches either.
Well, no, I appreciate you bring that up. Yeah, sorry, Brad. I appreciate you bring that, because people don't realize that, like you said, you're speaking about a problem and you have a solution. They're going to research you, and remember, the behavior changed now. It's no longer, they're going to research you and look you up and get all the information. That's weird. And look at all the information, and
Kris,
then
you need to shut that off when you're doing these things.
That off. I have to do maybe just do a thumbs up there. But and because if you don't have that foundation, you made a good point, Jon, is that Copilot and AI is going to look at your stuff in a way for you to be another avenue to be found at the same time. So it has to match. You're right. Everything has to work together. It goes back
to, you have to have a proper representation of who you are and what you are. 100%. And you're saying on your website. So that's what it is your message has to match who and what you are, instead of thinking that people just know who I am. But I take it a bit further, and it draws back to the community. I think you also need to have a presence elsewhere other than just your website, so you have the visibility. I try to use the analogy all the time, and Kris has heard me say it probably countless times. He needs more than his hands and his toes and probably the trees in his backyard. People have a need and a problem they're trying to solve. You're not going to create the problem for them. And what I mean by this is, I need a plumber when I have a problem with my plumbing. Who am I going to call?
Right.
I'm going to call, I'm going to look it up. I'll find someone's name, but I'll also remember the truck that I saw driving down the street every time I went to the store, because subconsciously that name's going to be there, because I'm going to feel that I see them everywhere. So I'm going to feel that they have a presence, that they're all over the place and they're servicing people because they're all over the place. So
yep,
they must be good. They're driving around. Right?
Well, they're driving to, well, exactly. I mean, they're going to places. So I think many discount in 2025 and take it back to the community, having some sort of presence elsewhere. People will go, oh, I saw Jon. He talked about this. I have a problem with that. I'm going to call him. Versus I'm looking at Jon's website and it says that he implements software. But okay, he implements software, but how does that help me? It's almost figuring out a way to articulate and demonstrate you can solve and help someone's problem, because I am not calling an electrician to fix my toilet.
So I'll give you an example of myself to do with what you just said. So there is being I've been trying, and it's a lot of it's based on the stuff I'm writing at the moment, is being, for the last couple of years, trying to change the perception of people thinking that all I do is social media. And let's take that I'm an expert in social media. Let's
you
take
can
that
help me
back
out.
to
I have some questions. Can you help me out?
Right. So, yeah, I can help you out, but let's take it back. How did I get there? Right. So let's roll back to that. And it goes into the community as well here. How did we get there? So when I joined Data Masons to run their channel, I started realizing, hey, I just put myself in a situation. I don't like cold calling. It's not my thing. I don't like, at the end of the day, today I could probably do it, but back then I just couldn't do it. So I turned to LinkedIn. So we're talking now, when I left them was over 10 years ago. So prior to that, so we're talking about 14, 15 years ago. I turned to LinkedIn as my way, and LinkedIn back then, everyone thought of it as more as a resume board, and that's all it was. Prior to even that catchword that we use today, social selling. I was doing that 14, 15 years ago. And I used LinkedIn to build my reputation up and get Data Mason's name out through that as well. Where did that lead to into the community? And it goes back to your pieces of being out there and talking. Yeah, Data Masons was getting sessions to talk about EDI, but that was because they were sponsoring, not because they were getting picked to talk about it. But I was getting picked to actually go and talk about social media to other partners to say, hey, or ISVs to say, you need to start looking at it. So we started sharing what basically education about what was working for us and how to be successful with it. You can argue, so why did you do that? It was outside of what you did. It brought in someone warm because they trusted me. So I could bring in a partner. I could bring in, say, the two of you back then, right? What is he doing? How is he using LinkedIn? I don't know. I want to go and listen to how he's using it to drive business, right? Now I've got you hooked into trusting me. Maybe now we can have a conversation about EDI, right? And how you guys could sell it, right? For us, through your customers. Anyway, trying to get, so, but then that snowballed into Microsoft then catching on to it and having me speak at events like the WPC Inspire event. And keep on going with that. I mean, convergence. I mean, so now we're going back in time, right? So some of the old conferences which are around.
I remember convergence.
Yep. I was invited to go and talk about how to use social to drive drive business through either an ISV or a partner, how to find customers. But I took it to another level. So when I got to places like Inspire and WPC, I was out there also actively. I sit in a keynote. I don't do it today because I think I just exhausted myself back then. I would sit in a keynote and I would basically tweet every single message I saw come up on the screen that whoever was speaking was talking about. This is one of my claims to fame. I love multiple Inspires. I got shut down by Twitter because it thought I was a spammer.
A bot.
Because the volume of messaging I was putting out in the time period was so great. And it was all manually. Like I said, it was, I look back to it, it's like, gee, they would shut me down for like 10, 15 minutes. And even Microsoft tried to talk to, this was before the Elon days, was trying to talk to Twitter and said, can we not have this person shut down because of better? Anyway, roll on a little bit to that. Within the conferences, and we've seen this, right? They had a leadership board to do with social media of what was being said for 2-3 years in a row, and they kept trying to change their algorithm to give others. I was always start at top of that leaderboard, right? And what that was a way was to stay top of mind. I've always believed that you have to stay top of mind. And it goes back to leadership as well, writing content, just keeping that mindset. And Brad, you bring up that good point, right? If I keep seeing that plumber truck, when I do need a plumber, I'm probably going to think about that. I think of it in a different way, right? I'm thinking of buying a new car. Do I buy a BMW or an Audi or whatever? If I keep seeing more about the Audi, I'm probably going to lean to that. It doesn't matter how much. It's just it gets into our psyche.
And
The
you also start
visibility.
comparing all others to that Audi. It's
Exactly.
it's a strange psychology that many don't understand.
Yep.
Because even without doing anything, for lack, air quotes, I love air quotes, everybody loves air quotes, but even not doing anything besides having a good advertising driving down the street, in essence, at some points, you can become the de facto standard that people compare against. Even if you get the deal or not, you still get brought into there where people weigh you as something. This whole social media presence. I have so many questions for you about that. We'll have to have next Tuesday. Is it next Tuesday?
Yep.
We're going to skip a session.
Tuesday.
We're going to skip a session and we're going to have a private conversation because I have some questions and struggles, and it's just the way that I think about some of the social media stuff, and I'm going to pick your brain. I'm just letting you know.
Now, really quick then, it sounds to me that, based on just the story you've given, Jon, so, people start to trust you, right? Because you're talking about a problem and you have a solution that may not be, you're talking about, you had a speaking session about social media, but then you're doing EDI solution, right? So is it more important now from a relationship aspect to have your own personal brand at the same time, right? Because you're speaking, you're talking about other things, but then like, I'm going to trust Jon, I'm going to trust Brad because I've seen him speak about something, and then I happen to have something. I'm going to ask him, hey, is this something that you can help? Because I trust you. So I'm curious about your take on that. Is that important now that you have a personal brand?
Let's define, right? Let's define, because we know there's a lot of companies out there that struggle with having someone that becomes a personal brand with inside their organization and takes, in their minds, right, senior management takes away from the organization that they're working for. There is a conflict. I would say I probably did go through that at some point with Data Masons, because I know that people thought I was actually a co-owner for a period of time, but I never was. To me today, I think at the end of the day, there's a balancing act.
I thought it was your company at one point, just to be honest.
I wish it was. When they sold for 100 million, I wish it was. But even that, I would have taken just $1 million and I'd been happy. But
I would have taken a penny.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, Kris, I think it is important to find and have and let people that can be out there and help you from a voice. And if we want to call that thought leader, whatever you want to call it, right? I think it's beneficial to have. It gets you out there. I think what I like is it sometimes opens the door up to the soft approach, right? I mean, even things like this podcast, right? At the end of the day, me talking, is that really directly helping your business? You can argue and say, well, we put a lot of time in it. Does it really? Indirectly, it probably does, because it brings attention. It brings people in that want to listen to the conversation and start to trust you. So I think trust comes in different ways. It's not always about, it goes back to that thought leadership and what I said about, let's not always try to keep selling the product, to sell our expertise and what we're talking about and things like that. So yes, I believe it is important, but there is a balance as well to look at. And I think some, and again, I'll probably get slapped, but they're probably never going to be my customers anyway. Some of the partners out there, or some execs who don't believe in it, start looking at changing your tune, because it really will help you in the long run. If you've got someone that's willing to go out there, support them, because I think in the long run it will help. And then going back to that content development, whenever we go in and we want to do a thought leadership with the organization, that can be, we work with them and say, okay, who is going to be that thought leader? Is that going to be you as the CEO? Or is it going to be this other person that's the VP of sales? Or is it the VP of technology? Or someone else, right? Who is the person that we need the customers, prospective customers, or even customers to trust, who they can relate to? So I think at the end of the day, I think in this day and age, we have to do that, but balance it.
Yeah, and I agree. There is a fine balance there, because when you say thought leadership, that comes to my mind about, okay, well, you're putting that content together, and that's your kind of your personal perspective, and you're putting content about thought leadership and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a fine line, but at the end of the day, you are the one that's putting that effort into it. So it does carry with you as you move on to something else.
Right. But if you're and I also look at that is, people leave because of a reason. And
Thank
9
you.
out of 10
Always.
times, right? They
Thank
leave
you.
because they're unhappy with where they are.
Can you repeat that?
People leave because of a reason, because they're probably unhappy, not because of because they want to go out there and be top dog. At the end of the day, is you continue, you will reap the benefit from it, from an organization.
That
100%.
That is so important. I love what you're saying, and I could talk with you about this for hours, and that is an important message. A lot of times individuals may have a different approach, thinking I want to hold someone so they can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better to have a beneficial or friendly relationship. Keep people happy, they'll stay. They will not leave, because if they're happy with whatever it is, product, service, relationship, if they feel they're getting something from it, right, selfishly in a sense, I mean, ultimately, all relationships come down to, what can I get from it? And what can I get from it doesn't have to be, what are you giving me? Because you could also be giving me enrichment. You could be giving me happiness, because our conversations are enlightening. So that's when I say getting something from a relationship, it doesn't have to be financial or in the sense of using, but everybody's relationship, even your personal relationships, you're getting something from it, either whether it's even down to joy. But that's one of the most important things with building relationships. People will stay with you, employees, customers, whatever you call them, if they're happy with you, regardless of what's out there. And people will call them, they'll come up with searches, they'll see other things. Trying to hold them will build animosity, because then they'll figure out, how can I leave? They're trying to keep me in, they're not letting me leave, because people want that freedom to choose. It's part of who we are,
Right. I like to put it another way as well, Brad. At the end of the day, people buy from people. They don't buy physical products, right? They want to build that trust. And at the end of the day, having someone there, I take it back, and if she does listen to this, maybe Mary Myers would like this analogy, right? And I'm going to put it back as I think,
love Mary.
Right? I think she's doing an amazing job out there as well. And at the end of the day, is I look at it, I think, back in the days, we used to do a ton of business on the golf course, right? It didn't go away, but it slowed down a lot. It was not used. I look at this as, what we're doing is like the old days, but electronically, right? Using tools like LinkedIn maybe, or whatever. At the end of the day, you are building relationships, which is all trust, right? And that was happening. It didn't matter about what the products, it sort of goes back to is who you know or what you know. It's not always what you know, it's who you know. It's how you got to where it is. And we're trying to get that out. So I put it down, but I think the golf course is coming back, and there's a ton of businesses going on there. But I do look at like LinkedIn sometimes. as the electronic version of the golf course. I'm going to put myself as just out there, right? Why did I reach out to you guys to be on your podcast? And luckily, hey, you got me on here. It's because I felt over that. I look back at the last couple of years and thinking, yeah, I try to stay top of mind, but I need to be in other places. So I'm going to put my hands up and be selfish and say, and guys, well, maybe I won't put this one out now because he's just admitted why he wants to be on here, but because I needed to put and
we'll edit that out. So keep telling us. We'll just edit it out.
Right. It's to elevate. It's to back to what I used to do. And I feel like for me personally, I've dropped off a little bit of being out there as, I'll say, a top dog because of some things I've done. But then I also could look back. It's like I retired off of the directions board last year after being on there for 10 plus years. So at the end of the day is that had me, I suppose you could argue and say, okay, I didn't look at it like this personally, but it elevated me, right, all the time because people would see me there. I was part of the board. I was always at the front. I'd be up on the stage when they introduced who were the volunteers, right? That, or I was on their website. That is not happening. So you have to look at these things and evolve. But going back to where we were going is 100% is if you've got someone inside the organization is willing to be your top dog and being willing to go out there, do a podcast, or whatever, as long as it doesn't take away 100% of their day-to-day job. So if they're generating business, don't squash it. Look at supporting it and maybe, help it in a way. I was trying to think of another example. Years ago, there was a partner that I was talking to the CEO. It's like, we're struggling to get the team to write blogs, right? We know we need to write them. Marketing can't do all of it. We want the team internally to write. But we've got some great minds, but they don't want to write because they're being told that they have to make their billable hours. So instead, we came up with the plan. It's like, why don't we include into the billable hours that if they write a blog, that counts to their billable hours. So hypothetically, if they write a blog, it checks off 2 hours of their billable hours they've got to do that week. And what they found is that changed the mindset, and they ended up actually getting one person on the consultant team who ended up writing all the time, not because, and they didn't want to lose him from the billables. He was still doing the billables. He was actually billing more because he was writing as well.
Take it all the way back to a couple points, but it is to the point you're saying, because also that same person that's doing that content is also learning more, because if they're writing content,
yes,
and that doesn't have to be the content that's the latest and greatest, most complicated. It could be another way to use customers and ship to addresses in Business Central, for example, to bring it back.
Exactly.
To go back to your golf course, it's another thought that I say to people, and the reason why, this is Brad's Psychology 101 on how I can claim to think that I just know things. But the golf course is a good place, and a lot of business happens at golf course, just like at the networking events at some of these conferences. Yep. And it's not because of the networking event because you're having a drink, because some people go to those events and do not drink. You know, we had one, we were together recently. I had mocktails and I was talking with everybody. But what it is everyone's in a different environment. They feel more relaxed. They don't feel like it's a sales pitch. I feel like I'm sitting there talking with Jon as a person about my problems, about what he can do, about what he's done, what he's seen. And it's not a sales pitch, and it's not an environment where I want your business. It's, hey, let me just build trust, because relationships all come down to trust. I'm going to build trust through that conversation because we're in a relaxed environment. We're open to be more receptive. And now I want to work with Jon because I now have trusted him, because I get to know him as a person. I feel, in my opinion, I feel in this world of AI, go back to what we said before, say it a different way to sort of repeat ourselves. I think relationships are going to be the most crucial part of business, even with AI doing all these other things, because
100%.
We are a communal species and we still will need to have that connection. As much as we think we can do everything alone, you still need that external stimulation from another person.
Right. And I mean, and I'll get a little personal here. Deep down, I'm a very shy person. People are going to laugh now. It's like, damn, he's not a shy person. He's out there. But I am. Back in the days, I'd be that person that if someone said, hey, you're going to go to a conference, I'll go and stand in the corner or find a way to get out of the door as quick as I could because I don't want to go and mix with people. But over the years, I changed that. Social actually helped that because it built trust. People started to want to talk and et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day is, yeah, I mean, conferences really help. At the end of the day, I've gone through and I've sort of like tried to coach people as well. It's like, hey, at the end of the day, I always looked at it as being, I want to be the last man standing or the last person standing. Let's get this politically correct, but last person standing in the room because you don't know what's going to happen, but it gives me an opportunity.
I think you can say last man standing now in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Good. Hey, but I'll still say last person.
No, I understand. I just had to throw that in there just because it's who I am.
Yep. So it's building that, and I said, look, it's not always about going out there. I mean, yes, go out there, have fun, but it's not also about going out there and putting it politely, shit faced. At the end of the day, is I know that I remember closing or basically getting a massive opportunity at like 1 o'clock in the morning because I sat there, but I'd been talking to that person on and off over a period of time at different conferences, and we just happened to sit at the bar together talking, and suddenly it just came out and said, okay, we want to work with you. But I mean, tying in, it's like, I've always believed in the community. I mean, let's tie back into that a little bit is, when did I get involved in the community? That's probably a good question I'll ask myself, right? And it goes back to the data. So we all know about Summit, Dynamics communities. I know there's other events like Dynamics Con, which I believe in. I believe in all the community stuff. Have I been to everything? No, it's challenging. It's a big expense to try to be everywhere. But I actually was at I always say it was at the real first ever Dynamics Community Summit. Technically, there was one before where they sat around a table to work out how it was going to pull together as a small group. But I went to the first ever one that was out in, I think it was Bellevue, out that way in the Seattle area. And I remember being there with it wasn't with Data Masons. I was with Bottom Line Technology with the Crateform product. We were there, and I remember as if we were in the hallway. If someone was talking to you, and then on the other opposite table, someone was talking as well, it was a struggle to get through. That's back. So that's how long I've sort of been going. I think out of all the summits, I've only ever missed 2 because of personal reasons. So I've pretty much been to every single one. I will give a shout out. I know he's not involved anymore, but I'll give a big shout out to Andy Hafer, because when I did leave Data Masons, I was in transition, and that was right around Summit. And I was talking to him and said, look, I'm probably not going to make it. I'm in transition. I don't have the funds. And now I look back and it's like, I should have put that as a priority, but I didn't look at it. I was still working out. Am I going out on my own? Am I going somewhere else? And he turned around and said to me, hey, you are coming. He said, don't worry about the cost. I'm picking up your hotel. Just pick up your flight. Basically, everything else is paid. You just do a few hours for me because I was helping them a little early on with their social media, trying to get that working for them. So I gave him a lot of advice. So it was a trade-off. Basically, we traded some time. So I always give him credit. And that really elevated at the time. Being there helped me build my business out. But the community is really a key. I mean, you go back, both of you talked about, especially Kris, you were talking about being a speaker. I've always tried to look at being a speaker at every event and trying to bring a topic that makes sense, that the audience wants to hear about. But it's not always about, to me, it's not selling, it's about educating. That comes number one. So many people say to me all the time, it's like, you don't talk about yourself or what you do. I'm not there for that. I'm there to teach. And that becomes my priority. So I probably did, on your podcast, I did a little bit more selling of myself than I probably normally do. But community is really important. I said I'd been on the board for Directions for over 11 years. I mean, that was when I started, we were down in the 500s, lower than 500 attendees. And when I left, we were like 1,200 plus people. I mean, and a massive event. Um, I mean, I'm proud of the community. It wasn't just me, but the whole community came together. That event is amazing. And I think it can grow. I mean, if this community keeps on growing as it should, it could easily be a 2,000 person event. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like that when you're there. There is so much involvement with people. And if we take like Summit, last year I remember making an effort, didn't want to, I went and sat on lunchtime. I sat down at the table, happened to be all end users. Somehow we got talking. And I started asking the question, did you migrate to BC, or are you on BC? Yes. Did you migrate there? No, we were new. And I learned of all the people I met, there was actually more BC cells than there was migration happening. So again, community is really key.
It's such a large community, but it's so small at the same time. Yes. And to go back to your point, I don't take this as you selling yourself. I take it as you sharing your experience and knowledge, so others can learn and maybe take a look at what they're doing. And we learn by others. We learn by experience, either hearing and listening to others' experience or by our own. It's how we learn and we go through. So
it's giving back, because I've shared this story in the past where I was on that other side. I was the one that was sitting in the very back listening to a speaker and sharing their experience. And as I progressed with my career, I want to give back, because I learned so much from others. I learned so much from the community. The one thing I can do is give my time back. And so speaking and just educating, and that's the focus, is education. I'm not trying to sell myself, sell anything else. I just want to share what I've learned throughout my career. And hopefully somebody that's sitting back there could feel the same way. And it kind of repeats that cycle, and hopefully seeing them up there in teaching, a session. And going back to the community, it's the importance of community is that you brought up directions, and, fun fact, I'm working with Mary on the marketing side. I'm coming from a tech background, so similar to you, Jon. Yeah. I'm a shy person. I think every tech person, every IT person, I don't know, a little bit more shy, but being part of that, seeing it come together is impressive. And now we have directions in Las Vegas coming up, so that is going to be fun, and we're looking to see everybody joining us there, especially for smaller partners or ISVs. They're getting to the space. This is the event to go, because then you get to see how everyone's doing it and learning from everybody, and how to market yourself. Right?
And I think I've got a good analogy as well on directions. Right, at the end of the day, is when the competing partners, because technically they're still competing, right? They're all trying to close maybe BC business. As soon as they walk through the doors of the hotel for that event, they are no longer competitors. Everyone there is to share with everyone else. It goes back to a comment we made earlier on, Brad, right? Which was, at the end of the day, is the more we share with each other, the greater this community can be, the greater we can drive more business. At the end of the day, that truly happens at that event. I'm not saying it doesn't at other events, but the whole competitive thing goes out of the window. As soon as we go out the door at the end of the event, we're competitors again. But while we're in that few days we're there, we are not. We're all sharing. And I think that is really the key. So at the end of the day, I would say to anyone, it's too late now, but go out there, go and put a session out there. People want to hear. I mean, I sat on running the sessions, or basically the content, for a few years with directions, and I was always looking for new voices, because yes, I want to hear. It's great to hear Brad and Kris. They've got great stuff. They're always bringing fresh content, but there's God knows other people out there that also have knowledge and experience. Let's bring them to the forefront as well.
Did you just say don't go to my sessions?
No, I wasn't saying don't go to your session. I'm looking forward to that. I can't go to your session next week because it's on at the same time as mine. So that's where I meant.
But I understand what you meant. I have to throw some of that stuff in there. It's just part of how I am with the conversation.
But yeah, go out there. Be it, but support it. I mean, I'd love to be at every single event. I mean, I just, at the end of the day, as a business owner, and I'm sure many others, is we only have so much of a budget, right? At the end of the day, is do I feel a benefit to be at all the events I could think of? Let's just call out three main events I think of, right? Directions from a partner ISV standpoint, Doug, right? Dynamics Con, that's going to be in, May, which is going to be a mix for end users and partners. And then we got Summit later on. Yes, there's the road shows and there's the regionals and the local meetings that happen. It's tough to be at all those places.
It is.
So you have to pick and choose. I mean, I'd love to be at Dynamics Con this year. I just can't put it in the budget. And plus, there's a lot of other stuff we've got going on internally. We just can't be there. And we'd love to be there. For many years, I've always wanted to go out to Directions EMEA. It keeps getting put off because other things come up. Right?
It is a challenge of picking which event to go to because of what you had mentioned. It's sometimes not financially feasible, but also time-wise and logistically. I'm with you. I've been trying to get to Europe for several years, but some of these events take more to go through. So it is a challenge sometimes to pick the one that you feel will provide you the most value, but it's also important to understand and accept that you can't go to them all. And I like your notion of going out and presenting, speaking, and doing sessions. And if you can't make it to one of the larger sessions, there's the road shows and the meetup type sessions that are a smaller, local, 1 day, half day type events that if they're in your area, give it a shot because it's same type of people, but a smaller crowd and maybe a little less pressure. But also one thing I know is I've been into many sessions where there's first time speakers and everyone who's in the sessions with our wonderful community support everybody, even if they see they're nervous or if they feel that there's a challenge. Many others will just jump in and help and engage to help bring some lightness to the room and also help drive it to make sure it's an effective session. So I'm with you. I think everybody should do it.
And I think it's the end of the day, let's not just limit that, right? And at the end of the day, I'm sure there's going to be end users that end up that listen to your podcast, right? At the end of the day is also think about being speakers. You actually, as an end user, bring a lot of knowledge from a different perspective. It's great, and I really respect every partner ISV that puts their time and effort. But I think we need to have a little bit more end user. I know we see that a little bit more in the end user stuff. We won't see it at Directions because end users are not allowed into the event. But at the end of the day, I think coming from the end user community really gives another perspective on things because, again, you can talk it from truly in the trenches. So again, we'll go back. If you're a discrete manufacturing company that's gone through some challenges through maybe implementation, or you had to do something with BC to do what you got to for your business, I'm positive there are other end users in discrete manufacturing, maybe not making the same things as you, who want to listen to how you solve those problems. Because I guarantee they're also having those issues as well. So it does help. And again, community, right? At the end of the day is just support it. And community, we also, I don't know, sometimes I feel like, you've got the other side of it is MVPs, right? At the end of the day, MVPs is another avenue on the community side. I think there's been a little bit of I'm going to personally say what I hear out there is there's been a little bit of a bad rap, I think, on the MVPs recently. But again, at the end of the day, there is an opportunity for others to be out there who have the knowledge as well. So MVPs, I support you. I think you bring a lot. And I know you guys is also there as well. But at the end of the day, there are others out there who don't have those titles and know a lot of stuff, and we need them to share as well. And it's not because they need to be an MVP. They just need to share.
No, absolutely. I like that. Well, Mr. Jon, I'd love to talk to you more about the community, so I think we'll have to follow up. But I do have a couple questions for you as we wrap this up. If you could give 1 or 2 tips for someone to help with their social media presence, and I'm going to call you after because I'll send you a message. I'm struggling on something.
I'm going to write this down.
You should write it down.
I'm
But
going
if
to.
you could give one or two, your choice, tips of how someone could effectively increase their social media presence successfully.
Oh my God.
Put you in the spot.
It's funny because I'm just thinking about how I need to increase my social presence. That's all I'm thinking. It's like mine's dropped off because you get busy. I think I mean, my number one is, like anything, right, is blocking time out on the calendar and do not go and replace it with something else. So hypothetically say, okay, Friday afternoon between 4 and 5, I'm going to write my messages for the next week and then schedule them all, right? I think at the end of the day, there's that piece. I think we don't do that enough. I mean, I know that I'm beating myself up trying. I got to do more. I mean, I do write, but again, I got to do more. I know I got to do more, and I used to do more, but we get busy. But I think as soon as I put stuff on the calendar, I tend to get better because it locks that time. Now, probably for the first, I'm going to say period of time, you're going to keep canceling that. But over time, try not to do that. Who was I think it was someone outside of the community they basically put everything they do to the point of, I get up in the morning and my calendar from the morning to I go to bed is what I use. It's like, I'm going to the gym between 7 and 8. I'm going to put that on my calendar. From this to this, at 12 o'clock noon, I'm walking the dog for 15 minutes just so I get away from my computer. Lock it down on the calendar. And I think at the end of the day, it puts you in that mode that you have to do that task in it.
I like that. And it becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes easier, as you had mentioned. I think that's important. And also, I think others need to respect other people's calendars even if they put some of those events on there, just to remind them, because I know I do that on some of my things, and I'll put down, like you said, I put down lunch. I'll put down different things because I want to make sure I take a break, for example. The scheduling of the posts is a great tip. I appreciate that. And then focusing and taking the time to do that. I have a follow-up question to that because I appreciate that feature on both LinkedIn and Twitter. Do you think that those platforms treat the content that's scheduled differently as how it may appear to the audience? So
I heard you use the word Twitter. First of all, I'd say to you, don't even bother anymore with Twitter.
Okay.
It doesn't help our business. I've run so many analytics for the last few years on that. No one is getting any traction on it that makes sense to even bother to post on it. I think going back to the schedule, how do you do the scheduling? There are plenty of tools out there, Hootsuite, Buffer, and all that could schedule. I think what you'll find is that doing those tools will definitely downgrade you. I have not seen data to say that using LinkedIn's direct scheduling tool actually downgrades you. But again, what does it take to actually go and post, right? So again, put it on your calendar. It doesn't mean you can't write it ahead of time. Set yourself, you could probably put that message on in 5 minutes. So at the end of the day is test it, see how it works. You get better. But we do a lot of scheduling for a lot of our clients, but we have started moving away from the scheduling tools and logging in directly to the account and scheduling there.
Excellent.
So I think it's that, but I think I go back to the other pieces, Brad, on messaging. Don't just think about, if you're going to talk about a topic about acceptance testing, right? Go and write it, not just one message, write enough for maybe the next 3 months.
Oh, boom, I'm writing that down. See?
Right?
This is
because good. What you also got to remember is what we saw today, if I saw a message from you today, okay, that's great. But if I didn't see you pop on my feed with that message, I've never seen it. So it doesn't matter if you repeat. I mean, I don't always like to repeat verbatim, but it doesn't matter. You could bring it back if it still is sense. You can repeat. So sometimes what I'd like to do with our clients is take a topic and write a handful of messages for that same topic, and then we can start to schedule out. And over time, you're going to see your schedule is getting full because you're going down further. But at the same time, make sure you're tracking that in some spreadsheet or something so you know what slots you filled.
I love this. And there will always be the first time for somebody to see everything. And as you had mentioned,
correct,
they won't always see it at the same time. And that even goes with content and sessions, just to bring it back before we do wrap here. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a complicated topic either, because as you had mentioned, you sat and talked with members of Summit. There are always new team members joining an organization that are new to Business Central. There are always organizations that are new to Business Central. So someone always is in a spot where they need to learn how to enter a sales order, for example. So just because you may have been doing it for 20 years, or you think that everybody already knows how to use it, there is somebody else that's in their journey that hasn't learned that yet, or doesn't know of all the features that they could have. So I appreciate everything you just said. This last couple minutes was powerful for me. My mind is blown again.
And what you just said about sessions, it was a really hard thing when I was running the sessions on direction, right? The content, because at the end of the day, we'll see that session happening at all these other meetings. It's like, do we really want that session at directions as well? And you make a good point, is not everyone probably saw it, but at the same time, we're trying to look for fresh content. And it's a hard balance sometimes. It's like, and I even have that, it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, do I really want to see that same session being at 5 different events? But sometimes the audience is different. So that's okay. Yep. But I think you've got, as content decision makers, you've got to know your audience. If you are getting a lot of overlap, then start to think about that may not be the right thing. But I do think sometimes there is a little bit of, I mean, I'll just put it bluntly, there is sometimes that certain speakers constantly get chosen. But at the end of the day, there is a lot out there. So let some of the newbies in there as well, because they can bring another insight or a better idea. Put them together with that other speaker.
Thank you.
Topic.
Co-present.
I love when you have more than one speaker. Make it, if it's a panel or having, technically, I'm going to make you both happy, have Kris and Brad together, right? Doesn't need to be just Brad on his own, just Kris. Bring the two together. I know, Kris, you've done sessions with others as well. And I know, Brad, at the end of the day, it benefits, right? For the first time ever, I submitted a session with Mary Myers this year.
Excellent.
Right, for directions. Now, we'll see if it gets selected now, because there is a hook. We could see something, and it's like, okay, let's try a different approach. A lot of the sessions I put into directions were not just me on my own. They were with other people. And I think that's more powerful, because now we just used the two of you, and I know we want to close up here, is Brad, you may have one perspective on the topic. Kris, you have another perspective. I can listen when I have the two of you. I get the two sides, and you have the audience's perspective. So now you have multiple perspectives. This is just one person. It's one-sided.
Can't agree more.
Yeah.
I can't agree more. No, I am a fan of co-presenting. And if you listen to all the conversations I have with these committees and with other people, I would prioritize co-presenting for many reasons. Right. One, you had just mentioned a few points. One, the dynamic in the room is often different because you have different perspectives, different personalities that can bring more out from the attendees. Two, a lot of times They look at the session presenters saying, oh, they're a seasoned presenter with the assumption that maybe they're more comfortable, they know how to do it, they have experience. It's one of those things. Everybody wants somebody with experience, but nobody wants to give someone with experience. So then going with the co-presenting, if you have somebody who's new that may be a little nervous or apprehensive about trying it, put them with someone else that has done it, and they can mentor them and coach them through it. Then you have two people in there. So even if they're not comfortable and they can do a small portion of it, they get the experience of doing those presentations. And that is why I think that you should almost, anybody who's on a planning committee on any of these conferences that are worldwide, I would weigh those more as far as something we want because of those reasons. And it brings more people in.
Totally.
Yes.
But the only challenge you've got, and this is the challenge and being on the other side of the fence and seeing it as an organizer, the challenge you then have is how are we, I'll use the word compensating the speakers, right? Some events give you a free pass. A free pass costs that event money, right? It's not cheap. I mean, some of the past directions was like, just to have someone come in free was over $1,000. By the time you add, and that's just the ticket alone because of all the food and stuff like that. It's crazy amount of money when you really look at it. So now you bring in two. Do I give them free? Now I've doubled my money, right? Double cost to have. So there is a balancing act.
It's a struggle. I agree with you.
It's a struggle, but at the end of the day, me personally, I would probably, I mean, I love free tickets to get in an event, but I probably would say, hey, I'm okay paying half the price of the ticket instead of the full if I can have and see more panels.
But there's also I understand the balance of it. I do understand there's a cost to it because the event, I know the cost that go into some of these events because people think a cup of coffee I could buy down the street for $1, but in these events, they're going to charge you $100 for a pot of 8 cups. Ridiculous. I understand the markup on it, but also you have better speakers and a better journey. See, I'm going to keep going back to this. I'm all on this journey kick. Give an attendee a journey that they can follow. If they feel they can get something out of it, you'll have more people who want to attend. So
and
it's you build it, they will come type thing in some essence. And I understand I'm thankfully not involved in worrying about any compensation, and nor am I saying any should be given. I'm just saying from a presentation point of view, two presenters often.
I just wanted to put that out as the other side of the
I understand.
The challenges these organizers have. But I think we're all in agreement, right? More panels, bring more speakers together. Let's
more conversations.
Share this wealth of knowledge.
I love the panels too because people can ask the questions. Solve my problem. I want to get
it becomes a conversation, right? So it makes it easier for people to just listen in.
I could talk about this stuff for days, but Mr. Jon, we'll have to schedule another conversation to follow up on this. But we do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Time that's spent, we don't get back, and time is valuable. So anybody that spends time with us and shares their information with us, we're greatly appreciative, and we say that sincerely. In the meantime, if anyone would like to get in contact with you to learn more about the marketing services that you offer or anything else that you are doing within the community, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Go look us up on our website, marketeering.com. That's one place to look at it. Or just come and find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
And that's Jon with Jon and not the H. That's another story for another day.
We'll put that on the next one.
That's not my full name. I shortened it, and there is no H. And if you put a H in, you never find me. But just find me on LinkedIn. I mean, it's pretty easy enough to find me there.
Excellent. And we do have guest bio pages now, so we'll put all of that information linked to this episode as well, so that us can get in contact with you. Again, I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll see you next week, and I will pick your brain. Be ready.
I'll be ready.
All right. Thank you very much.
Care, Jon.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
ciao,
both of you. Catch you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, matalino.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.